This episode of Freedom Revamped the podcast was sponsored by Krakatoa Coffee Company. Krakatoa is a Black-owned coffee company that sells a variety of coffee roasts to satisfy every coffee drinker's palate. What you will get are satisfyingly rich, robust, and smooth coffee flavors. Their coffee comes in standard, espresso, whole bean, and single-serve cups. They also sell mugs in case you need something to drink their delicious coffee from. And they offer gift cards in several different denominations. So, head on over to krakatoacc.com and follow them across the social medias at Krakatoa Coffee Company.
Hello and welcome to the Freedom Revamped podcast. My name is DeShon, your host, and I am so excited to be joined by Miss Tekita today. Please tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Tekita Bankhead. I am a native of Mississippi, currently living in Illinois, and I am the creator and editor-in-chief of the Pedestal Project.
Well, we are so excited to have you, Ms. Tekita, and we will actually be diving in to your brand today. So before we get too far, let's go ahead and discuss how you started the project and what you started it for.
Sure. So the Pedestal Project began, I think it's been almost 3 years now. So it was around October of 2018, 2017. Oh gosh, I think, 2017, and then officially launched February 2018. Okay, I had to remember the dates. But pretty much it came out of some personal life experiences that were happening. And I'm a really huge proponent of therapy. And so I went to my therapist, and we were just talking about some things that were going on. And she posed a question to me that basically kind of said, have you ever considered the fact that you pretty much put everyone on a pedestal except for yourself? And it was a really jarring question for me, but I thought it was really eye-opening because I said, I can't think of another Black woman who doesn't have to operate the world in this way. And so that was where the name, the Pedestal Project, kind of came from. And we pretty much, so I took that as building a platform that made it to where any Black woman who had ever felt overlooked or undervalued came first. So the mission of the Pedestal Project is basically to restore, validate, and affirm Black women. And so most of that is through creative writing, and we get Black women to share their stories. But we also really work hard to highlight Black women-owned businesses. We make sure that we host different types of events that are specifically for Black women in holistic health, particularly mental health. That's where a lot of my focus lies. And then just making sure that Black women have a space to see themselves.
Now, I love that. That sounds much like myself. Sometimes you get, caught up in the hustle of life, and oftentimes you do find yourself doing more for others than you do for yourself. So the birthplace of the project is awesome, and then also hearing what it is that you all are doing is awesome. So you talked a little bit at the end about how you guys do it through creative writing. What do you guys host workshops or something of that nature that kind of allows for women to express themselves through the creative writing?
Yeah, so actually it's twofold. So part of it is our writing team. So I have a team of 2 assistant editors and about 10 writers who contribute to the online blog space pretty regularly. And so even though I created the project, the goal was for it to not have just my voice, but to make sure that there were as many different types of voices of Black women as I possibly could. Really wanted to have some intersectionality there. And then also, there's a twofold part. Of course, pre-COVID, we were hosting events where I live, which is in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. And we have the Pedestal Experience, which is basically a brunch workshop series that's only for Black women. And we pretty much kind of talk through a lot of different topics that affect Black women in a really specific way. So whether that's perfectionism, thinking about anxiety, some other just kind of identity work, we do usually have writing-based workshops there with panel discussions and really, really delicious food. So it's twofold. The writing is both online and with people who engage with us through the Pedestal Experience.
That sounds amazing, Tekita. Could you share a little bit with us about what kind of subject matter people can expect when they're visiting the blog?
Sure. So we pretty much cover a variety of things. Most notably, I would say that we go with everything from political representation of Black women. So even thinking about, particularly with this being an election year, some of the misogynoir that we're seeing that Black women are dealing with, if we're thinking about Vice Presidential-elect Kamala Harris and some of those things that we start to see. Also, a lot of lifestyle and health things. So whether it's body image issues, whether there are things about how to really take control of dealing with your mental health. We have a lot of topics around that. Other things could be a little bit lighter, like love, dating, and relationships. That seems to have been one that's come up a lot more recently. And then also a lot of pop culture and entertainment things. So we really do a lot of reviews on different shows or movies that highlight Black women in ways that are really revolutionary and are really forging new narratives that hopefully are starting to become uplifted more regularly. So it's really a kind of a grab bag of anything you can think of. And again, just making sure that we're capturing the voices of a lot of different types of Black women.
I love that you mentioned, well, you just kind of summed it up at the end with the different types of Black women. I think there's quite a complexity to who we are. And hearing the way in which the blog is set up and the subject matter that you all are presenting, you're kind of touching in sticking yourselves in all of those niches of the types of lifestyles in which people indulge in. Some people might be dealing, like you said, with mental health things as far as like anxiety and depression and things like that, while others might be battling with self-image and the beauty and health side of things. So I think it's really great that you guys are touching on all of those things. So you talked about in the beginning how you came up with this idea. What were some things that kind of made you nervous about beginning a project such as this? Because this is not a normal business that people know, like, this is the product I'm selling, this is how much we'll be making from the product. This is a different kind of business that almost kind of functions as a ministry in a sense. So what really helped you to say, like, this is something I want to do, but I'm going to do?
Wow, I don't think I've ever had it referred to as a ministry, but that's really a really fitting description for it. So I don't think in the beginning I set out for it to become a business. I do think it was more of trying to build a communal space of Black women who might have needed a reminder that they weren't necessarily doing this all alone. So some sense of community. And so initially when I started, it was meant to be more of a hobby, quite honestly. It started out very small with just me. And I always tell my writers now, the biggest thing towards the beginning of my journey is I don't think I planned for it to go as well as it did go. I thought that, oh, okay, this will be great. I'll share a couple posts here and there. Hopefully they'll resonate with some people, but definitely did not expect for it to grow as quickly or as have the far reaching, the far reach that it does have. And so I think that I'd say maybe after about 5 minutes, after about 5 months of starting the blog, it was clear that it was really something that people needed. And it was something that people felt accessible to them. So that was when I kind of re-strategized and thought about, okay, if this is going to be something a bit more sustainable and a little bit more than a hobby, then we're going to have to look at structure and building something that will continue to last. And so kind of went back to the drawing board, thought about what would it look like to have a team of people. And from there, my first staff, I had about 7 writers the first year, and that worked really well. Now we've grown to a staff of 12, and we are actually really, really excited each cycle when we get applicants, because we typically do that at the end of the year, but we get people who are interested throughout the year. So even if people aren't contributing writers, if there's someone who identifies as a Black woman and just has a story that they'd like to share and they're looking for a platform to showcase their talents on, we accept reader submissions throughout the year. So I think really pulling back and saying, wow, if this is something that other Black women do feel is something that they feel like they really need, then I want to make sure that I build it in a way to where no matter what happens, whether I'm in charge or if it's someone else is in charge, that they will still have this space no matter what. So yeah, I think I don't know if I still would call it a business. I really always just say it's an online community, just because I think that it's where a lot of people find themselves.
And I love that, Tekita. I think one thing that stuck out to me is this idea of carving out a safe space or a community for women of color. And that's very beautiful foundation for it to have sprouted to what it is today. I laughed a little bit when you said you'd never thought of it as a ministry, but in many ways it is, because when you are able to allow people to relate, or like you said, give them a space in which they can, say, oh, me too, or whatever the case may be, or have a feeling of community, that in itself is it's a ministry. Somebody needed that. Somebody needed the Pedestal Project, and they're thankful that you created it. So thank you for your obedience in doing so.
Well, amen. Amen. Yes. I will make sure that I continue to describe it that way now. Because I'm like, yeah, I didn't even think about it that way. So thank you for introducing that to me.
That's it. That's exactly what this is. So I kind of want to segue now into hashtag Black Girl Love Notes. When Courtney brought this up, of course, I wanted to look at the hashtag and see, what's been going on with it. But I would love for you to share where that came from and how people can be involved in it.
Yes. So again, like I talked about, the main purpose of the Pedestal Project is to uplift Black women through restoration, validation, and affirmation. And one of the most common pieces of feedback that we had gotten, mostly in the in-person workshops with people over the last year and a half or so, is that a lot of times we haven't mastered the ability of speaking to ourselves with kindness and compassion. So again, I talk a lot about therapy in workshops when I do speaking things, and I just talk about the power of using tools to disrupt negative thoughts. And a lot of people don't always realize the power that can have when you translate that virtually. And so Black Girl Love Notes is pretty much our way of helping Black women speak to themselves with more kindness, giving themselves a lot more grace, and just thinking through, no matter what's happening on any given day, you're doing the best you can. And these are it's pretty much our love notes from one Black girl to another, so that people are able to kind of almost keep those as affirmations or little nuggets or whatever it is that they feel like they may need, so that they can also feel restored, validated, and affirmed, even if it's in small doses.
One thing that I keep hearing you saying too is you mentioned, and I'm assuming this is probably the goal or the motto of the Pedestal Project, but hearing you say the validation and the affirmations and how important those are for us to get through each day, considering the times right now. We're in a very interesting space, and a lot of us are kind of wandering in the midst of this pandemic, uncertain of ourselves, or uncertain of what's happening, or uncertain of what's going on around us. And a lot of times that can affect the way we feel, and more importantly, how we feel about ourselves. So having a space for validation and affirmation is definitely important. To continue to talk about the Pedestal Project and it being a blog space, in a medium like we have today, oftentimes people don't spend enough time reading. How do you guys go about making sure that you're keeping your traffic up and getting people engaged and involved in what you're doing on the blog?
So I think we approach it in two ways. Part of it is we pay attention to which types of topics our readers seem to be most interested in. And honestly, I would say that varies by quarter. And it could be quarter one, everybody's really into goal settings and love and relationships. And then, of course, we're looking at quarter three right now, where a lot of political topics are, the ones that tend to circulate a bit faster. So our strategy is mostly, what I tell my writers is to write whatever feels present for them. Because more times than not, if it's something that is continuously on your mind, then there's 9 times out of 10 there's a Black woman who's also been dealing with the same thing. So I really encourage them to switch it up a lot and not necessarily feel like they need to stick to the right thing, because again, I think that adds to the breadth of voices around what's actually happening. If we find that there are certain topics that people really engage with, we will typically try to build on those at a later time. Just because we can tell that people either want more information, people may feel as if it's something where they're looking for more solutions and trying to think through, how can I apply these principles in my life? So I guess authenticity is really what drives it more than any other strategy, because I don't know what it's called. I think that there's something divine about when something is on your heart, on your spirit, it's on someone else's too. And so I tell my writers first and foremost to focus on that more than anything, more than likes, more than shares, more than comments, because those are the ones where we get the special emails that are like, I was up at 3 a.m. and I came across this post and it was exactly what I needed in this moment. So again, as I'm explaining this more out loud, I see where you say this ministry thing is coming from, because it's absolutely just the right post typically finds the right person on its own.
And it's so funny that you say that, because I visited the website so that I can kind of be abreast to what it was you all were doing. And as I was scrolling through, I love the formatting of it, with the titles and images on the very first page of the website, because it kind of gives you an opportunity to not only see these words, but see images that are in close relation to them that kind of stand out to you. And one thing that stood out to me was a post that was entitled "My Mood Changes Like Shoes." And it was by one of your writers, Miss Chanel Davis. And it was so good for me. Oh my goodness. I was reading it and I was just thinking to myself, like, this is what I needed to hear right now. Dealing with anxiety right now in the midst of the pandemic, I do feel like I am getting moody, and like it's something that I'm not used to. Like, so trying to understand my moods, and then seeing all these fun ways in which she talked about moods in relation to shoes. Like, the writing is phenomenal. Like, and this was the one that like kind of delved into, but for her to have connected like the different styles of shoes, like she talked about flats and wedges and stilettos and kitten heels and the emotions that come with each of those shoes, it was so interesting. So you definitely did a good job of like picking writers and finding people who fit with your brand. So that leads me to my next question: how did you go about shaping a team and developing a sense of trust that they would help you fulfill the ultimate goal that you had set for the Pedestal Project?
Mhm. Thank you. Well, thanks for that. Chanel is awesome. She is one of our newest writers. So I think the first thing that I do is I am really clear in the beginning of what the brand is and what it is not. And some of the biggest points that I always tell my writers to keep in mind is that on my platform, one thing I absolutely do not necessarily support is any canceling of Black women. And so I tell them on the Pedestal Project, we are absolutely free to critique Black women, but we definitely do not cancel them. Because if there's a space for Black women if this is a space for Black women to be uplifted, even if that may not be the popular thing to do, then that would be completely, opposite to the mission of the Pedestal Project. And then also, I always, again, tell them to write in their truest voice. And I think when you give people the space to write in a way that maintains their own voice, as opposed to making them conform to this one unified, maybe a little bit more corporate tone of writing, I don't know that it relates in the same way. And so when writers submit, we typically do open up our writing applications around November, about late November, early December. And we have writers submit, what brought them to the Pedestal Project, why they were interested in writing. And then they all have to do a writing sample. And so it's really clear from the writing sample, it has to be related to some topic on Black women so that we can see how they write. Does their writing fill a void that might necessarily be missing? And I'm really intentional about trying to get a variety of identities. So right now, my team members, we have, several members who are mothers. Some are new mothers, some are older mothers. I have one writer who talks a lot about being a Black Muslim woman, because that's a space and that's a voice that wasn't necessarily there. We have a few Black women who are students, either doctoral students or master students or undergraduate. So they talk a lot about trying to balance work. We have some people who are really into, spiritual practices, while others don't necessarily have that voice. So I think the biggest thing that helps with building a team is building a team that is really of writers who are really secure in what makes them different and what makes them unique. And I think that we also, like when we do monthly writing team meetings via Zoom or Skype or whatever we're doing that month. And my writers are from all over the country, so they're from different places and we meet virtually. But what they all tend to share is that being a part of the team is really therapeutic for them. So I would say, if I had to guess, most of my team, once they join the team, elect to stay on for multiple years. And so I've been really grateful that when I get good writers, they really enjoy staying here and they want to stay and continue to write for the Pedestal Project. And I think what's also really important for me is that I don't limit what they do with their own brands. Because again, if Pedestal Project is something that's supposed to uplift Black women, of course it's going to start with my writers. And so, like Chanel, you mentioned earlier, she has her own blog space, Diary of a Chocolate Girl, and a podcast. And then we have other people who are either getting started with their own platforms. I have several writers who are published authors. So I think, again, just having the range of experience is really helpful for them to learn from each other, and to just really figure out what their truest writing style is.
And that must be a blessing to have, like you said, being able to find these people from all these different walks of life, well, specifically these Black women from all these different walks of life, who are willing to share in such a vulnerable way. Because the thing about writing, oftentimes for me, when I'm reading, whether it be a blog or a book, you can see the author through the writing. And that's a very vulnerable thing. Like, as an artist myself, I'm an actress. So just knowing like how we leave, everything in our art, and for you all to be crafting these blog posts and things like that, there's a lot of vulnerability that has to go into some of these posts, especially with the topics that you guys are talking about. So again, that brings me back to the discussion of it being a ministry, like being able to strip down and take your mask off so that someone else can see that and heal from that. It's a very beautiful thing to have such transparency. So I greatly appreciate both you and the team for doing that for Black women.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Really quickly, I just wanted to talk to you about, so we talked about the Pedestal Project and where you guys are now. Is there anything that you all see for the future? Is there what's next for the Pedestal Project? Is there more that you see from the platform, other things that you all might be able to dabble within, or is the blog space the space that you are intending to stay?
So I think that the blog space will always be our primary function. I think that will be it, but who knows? God may have very different plans. But for what I'm planning, I think that will be the majority of our home. Playing with the ideas in the future of doing a podcast of some sort, thinking through another way to continually bring more Black women into these spaces. I think one of the upsides about COVID-19 is, the creative flexibility that has come out of that, and thinking about new ways to do things that we were already doing. So we've toyed around with some other virtual options that I haven't quite figured out yet, to be honest. But I know that we want to continue expanding the team and continue expanding the conversation. One thing I do want to focus on a little bit more heavily. When we started, we were really, really focused on uplifting Black women professionals and Black women-owned businesses. And so on the website, we have a directory of just different Black businesses. And that's a core focus to me, not only just seeing Black women, but the economic empowerment of Black women as well. So eventually I would like to build some type of fund that helps Black women own businesses in the future. I'm not quite sure what that would look like yet. But I do want there to eventually be some type of financial support mechanism for either Black women-owned businesses or even Black students. Because I work in counseling, higher education, education and mental health are pretty core to just about everything I do. So I'm always thinking about how can Black women be healthy, but also how can they be successful and paid, because financial wellness is also a part of wellness as well. So I don't know. I think the future is pretty open, but in the immediate future, I definitely foresee myself continuing to grow the writing team, and making sure that there's space for even more contributions from other Black women.
That's great. You did mention the directory, so if any listeners hear this and get to this portion, make sure that you visit the Pedestal Project website. There is a whole tab dedicated to buying Black, and it's everything from food to health and beauty. So it's definitely quite a catalog. There's fashion, apparel, accessories listed on here as well. So there's so many options, from businesses that you can buy from, or businesses that offer different services and things like that. So thank you so much for putting that together, because I'm looking at it and I'm just like, wow, there's so much to go through. And you have so many different, arenas that you reached out to put this Rolodex together. So it's very diverse.
Thank you. And honestly, that we still have some entries that need to be added. So readers, just know that will continue to grow over the next few weeks, because we've gotten a lot of people who submitted their businesses.
That sounds great. So in closing, Ms. Tekita, if you could just tell everyone um, how they can be on the lookout for you all and what you all are doing. Do you guys have an email list of any sort or newsletters that you all utilize?
So our email list, if you go to our website at www.pedestalproject.com, the pop-up will come up and you can put your email in there. If you are a WordPress user, you can also follow the blog simply by going to it and just hitting the follow button. But that email will definitely give you an alert whenever there's a new article posted, and you can be one of the first people to just kind of know when that's happening. A newsletter is on the way. We'll hopefully get our newsletter started by the end of the year. So people who are on the website subscriber list will already be enrolled for the newsletter. Also, you can find us on social media. So we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Particularly go find us at Twitter because our Twitter is a little bit newer. So we really would love to have more followers there, but we would love to have you at any point. So on Twitter, you can find us at Pedestal Project. That's PEDESTAL Project, PROJECT. And then same name for Instagram and Facebook as well. So yeah, join, share, post, comment, let us know what you think. We get a lot of comments on individual posts on the website, and those are always really, really great to read because they go directly back to the authors. And a lot of my writers really love to engage with people in the comments and just kind of share perspectives. So definitely feel free to do that as well.
Well, thank you again, Ms. Tekita, for your time today. And again, for even creating the Pedestal Project. It sounds like it's doing so very much right now. And I know that, and I pray that it does even more in the future. And again, if there is any way that people can reach you, would you like for them to follow you on social media as well?
Sure, you're welcome to. And first of all, I wanted to also say thank you for having me. I love what you're doing with your platform. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak with you and your listeners. So thank you also. And yeah, you can find me. I'm pretty much on mostly, I'd say Instagram. Let's do Instagram. So you can find me Tekita Applebum. So kind of like the classic song. TEKITA, 2 A's, PLEBUM. So yeah, and if you have trouble, then I'm also linked to the Pedestal Project page. So usually you can get to me through either of those pages as well.
Sounds great. We will also be sure to have that information in the description below. So make sure you all stay abreast to what the Pedestal Project has going on. Make sure that you are continuously being restored, validated, and affirmed through their blog by visiting and reading whichever blog post sticks out to you. Make sure that you're not only visiting, but like she said, commenting, liking, and sharing it with your peers, because there's wonderful things coming for this business, and we want to be a part of it here at Freedom Revamped. So as always, make sure that you are practicing freedom and have a wonderful night. Say goodbye to everybody, Tekita.
Bye. Have a good night.